Hello, my fellow DC fans. I was always very suspicious when the word legacy was attached to James Gunn's Superman film. The word legacy can mean a great number of things, and one of the things it does mean is something that we leave behind when we die. A legacy. So, is James Gunn planning on killing Superman in Superman Legacy? Another red flag was that he started teasing All-Star Superman by posting some pictures from that graphic novel. A graphic novel where Superman gets a kind of solar illness and slowly dies by the end of that story. Red flag number 2. Red flag number 3 is that he cast David Corenswet. Not because David is a bad actor, not because it's bad casting, because he is fan casting. Because people have been, banding his name about. Fans have been begging for him to be playing Superman for a very long time. So that was more of a fan casting than a James Gunn casting. Now, no one was really fan casting Rachel Brosnahan. That was a James Gunn casting. So that's very interesting that New Hollywood gave fans what they wanted in terms of casting a Superman. Of course, what DC fans really wanted was for Henry Cavill to remain in the role. You can't have everything, right? Not these days. So for me, these are 3 red flags that James Gunn is planning on killing off Superman in Superman Legacy. The All-Star Superman hints, the casting, the fan casting of Superman himself within David Corenswet. And it's called Legacy. It's called Superman Legacy. Now, once he realised fans were, getting 2 and 2 and getting 60 at the end of it, he denied all of this. But we know that James Gunn has been economical with the truth before. So I've always been suspicious that he's planning on killing off Superman in this brand new DC universe. This is what happens when you get people who don't care about characters involved in making films about existing iconic characters. I've always said that James Gunn is a more than capable writer-director, that he can make a great DC universe, potentially. He can also get it wrong, potentially, and he can make a great Superman movie, potentially, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's planning on killing Superman off in this movie and having Superman's legacy be the legacy for the future Justice League in his new DC universe. Get in the comments below. What do you think? Is James Gunn planning on killing off Superman in Superman Legacy? Do you think the All-Star Superman hints kind of allude to this? The fact that fans were allowed to cast David Corenswet, it was not his choice. David Corenswet was out there already as someone the fans wanted cast as Superman. I'm not going to say that I'm being paranoid. It would not surprise me if Superman gets killed off in this movie. It would be outrageous not to have Superman in future, movies and in this Justice League that James Gunn is planning on building out. But James Gunn is a man who likes Z-grade characters. This is why he did Guardians. This is why he did The Suicide Squad. This is why he did Peacemaker. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. It would be absolutely insane. People would go absolutely mad about it. But don't think I'm being crazy here. I am crazy. I am a crazy dude, but I don't think I'm being crazy about this. It just wouldn't surprise me. And, because you've got to remember where we are. They're planning apparently a Supergirl movie. And just like in The Flash, where Supergirl replaces Superman, they could be trying the same thing again. Because ultimately, Superman Legacy could be the ultimate bait and switch. New Hollywood have been doing this aplenty within Star Wars, within the MCU. Why not do it in the DCU? Why? You think they won't? It wouldn't surprise me one little bit. Because why are you calling it Superman Legacy? Why are you throwing the All-Star Superman hints out there? You know, 2 and 2 may not equal 60. 2 and 2 may actually equal 4 here. And I'd love to know how you would react to this. Now, I know so many of you who subscribe to my channel are planning on boycotting this film. I don't boycott DC content because I don't. I want to see DC content. Superman is my man. He's my character. I could never boycott a Superman movie, but everyone must do as they must. I'm not here to lay a guilt trip on people that are going to boycott movies. That's not my intention. My intention today is to talk about my worrying feelings that Superman could be killed off before he starts off. And of course, I wouldn't be happy. I would be angry and I would be frustrated, but I wouldn't put anything past these people today. And so talking about that, and, asking the question if James Gunn's planning on baiting and switching Superman in Superman Legacy, does James Gunn have much of a plan for DC Universe? Well, let's have a look. Superman Legacy was always going to happen prior to even when he was made co-CEO of DC Studios. He was always going to do Creature Commando. Something that we found out yesterday is now delayed to 2025, according to one of the animators of the series that will consist of around 8 to 10 episodes, lasting 20 minutes an episode. So there'll be no DC Universe launching in 2024. And there'll be nothing until 2025. So in all intents and purposes, DC Universe launches in 2025, which means next year the only DC content we've got is Waller on Max, Penguin in the fall on Max, and Joker, Folie à Deux, next October of 2024. That's the main event, Joker, Folie à Deux. But the Penguin movie is also, not movie, the series. The Penguin Limited series on Max is very exciting. It's part of the Batman Cinematic Universe on Max. It should be awesome. And I have said before, the road to DC success isn't DC Universe. Actually, it's DC Elseworlds. The Batman 2, Penguin, Arkham, Joker, Folie à Deux. All these things are more exciting to me than what James Gunn is planning. Because what James Gunn is planning should have actually happened back in 2013. But they brought in Zack Snyder, an auteur who was doing his own thing, who shaves against the grain. You know I love Zack Snyder, you know I love Man of Steel, you know I love BVS, and you know I adore the Snyder Cut. I don't have any issues with what Snyder did. I've nitpicked before about doing a Superman Rebirth story in a Justice League movie. I don't think that was the greatest of ideas, but I still like Zack Snyder's Justice League. I can say a lot of things I think were mistakes from Snyder. But ultimately, I love his DC movies. I love him as a person, and I think he's great. So that's not the issue here. But what I'm saying is, you wanted to compete with Disney. You wanted to compete with what Feige was doing. Obviously, you couldn't bring in James Gunn at that time. He would have been brought in by Feige. He was doing Guardians. It wasn't possible. What I'm saying is, you could have brought in someone with the intent to do what they were doing and to do what James Gunn is planning to do now. But things can change very, very quickly in this game. Because as I say, Waller was happening prior to him becoming co-CEO of DC Studios. Superman Legacy, Waller, all of these things were happening anyway. Peacemaker Season 2 was happening anyway, whether there was going to be a DC Universe or not. So what he's doing now, he's trying to fit his original plans prior to being made co-CEO of DC Studios into this new universe. That's a problem, because it's not an original plan for a brand new franchise. It's taking what he was going to do anyway and going, oh, get in there. Have you ever done a lot of shopping, right? And you need to get all your cold meats, your milk, everything into your fridge. It isn't a big fridge and you're trying to make space and it's very, very difficult. And you've had something in there for months, but you don't necessarily want to throw it away. It's not out of date. It has a long life. But in the end, you have to chuck it away to make space. So Henry Cavill was that thing that was in the fridge for such a long time. So they threw him away to squeeze other things into it. Don't be surprised if Ta-Nehisi Coates and J.J. Abrams' Superman is still happening within DC Elseworlds. You know my opinion about that. If you want Supermen of colour, we have Val Zod and we have President Superman, who should be standing there in a trilogy at the end with the white Kal-El, the last son of Krypton. Imagine that, right? You do a Superman trilogy. I think I've spoken about this before on this channel, if not on Twitter. I would do a Superman trilogy, nothing to do with any franchises. I would do Kal-El's story, I would do Val Zod's origin story, then President Superman's story, and at the end of that trilogy, at the end of the third movie, there's some kind of threat that involves the multiverse, and they all stand together, ready to fight. Imagine that, a white Superman and two black Supermen standing together to fight together, kind of. And then after the third movie, you could do like a Spider-Man No Way Home movie with these three Supermen fighting together. For me, that would be freaking awesome. But that's the problem today. They talk about representation. They talk about inclusion. But they're not very inclusive, because what I've just suggested is inclusion. Having a white Superman standing with two black Supermen. But no, Ta-Nehisi Coates' idea was race-bending Kal-El, the last son of Krypton, that most black Superman fans don't want either. How do I know this? Because I've spoken to a lot of black Superman fans. Because as my job here on Movies TV Mad is, it's for me to know the views of you, the fans. Because this is not just about representing my opinion. That's a waste of time. Why would I set up a channel? Why would I be on Twitter as Movies TV Mad? Why would I bother being on Instagram as Movies TV Mad X if I was only going to listen to my own voice? You are what matters. You are what drive me. You know my views though. You can't be race-bending Kal-El, the last son of Krypton, when you've got at least two brilliant Supermen of colour in the comics. It doesn't make any sense. The Black Superman movie, the Black Clark Kent, the Black Kal-El, last son of Krypton, that film is still in active development. Who knows what's going on with that film? So you've got all these things that they were planning prior to Gunn becoming co-CEO of DC Studios. You've also got what Gunn was already planning prior to being made co-CEO of DC Studios in Superman Legacy, Waller, Peacemaker 2, and Creature Commandos. And now I think the Authority was always going to happen as well. All these things were going to happen with or without Gunn being co-CEO of DC Studios. But then Zaslav came along and goes, "Oh, I like what you're doing here. I know, why can't you just be running this thing for us? Why bring someone else in?" Now, originally he had Adby and DeLuca running DC. Now, officially that was a temporary post until he found someone full-time. But you know what I think of Mike DeLuca. Mike DeLuca produced, the first two Blade movies. Mike DeLuca knows everything you need to know about live-action comic book movies. He wanted to do an Iron Man film before Feige ever thought about it. So the man's a pioneer. He wanted to bring Cavill back. He did bring Cavill back. He had a lot of great ideas. I still believe that Mike DeLuca was the right man to run DC Studios, and I think not elevating him to that position is still a mistake, because I think that DeLuca is also a good CEO because he's used to being in that position. I think he was at MGM years ago with Pam Adby, who he's with at WB Pictures right now. But he's also a good creative at the same time. And this was the beauty of Mike DeLuca being a part of this. And by not letting that happen just because one movie, Black Adam, which had nothing to do with DeLuca, by the way, he didn't commission that film. The idiots prior to him commission that film. There should never have been a Black Adam movie, despite how much I love that movie. It simply shouldn't exist. And how do you actually commission a budget that's over 200 million for a film? You must have done your maths and calculated couldn't bring in the money that you wanted. This is how bad the previous leadership was. So I think Mike DeLuca was the right man for the job. And I think they made an utter mistake in making Gunn co-CEO of DC Studios. I believe, and I've said this so many times on my channel, there's a place at DC for James Gunn as a writer-director. As I say, all these projects he's doing now, Creature Commandos, The Authority, Superman Legacy, Peacemaker 2, Waller, all those things were happening anyway. So he could have had his own little universe in a corner, right? You could have had another universe in another corner with Cavill and Snyder and Batfleck and Gadot, right? Finishing off what Snyder was going to do. You could have just done a DC Elseworlds instead of DC Universe and had these different people doing their different things. You could have had Burton and Keaton doing, a Batman 3. You could have had that instead of trying to squeeze Keaton in a Flash movie. And, and replacing the Batman, the Thomas Wayne Batman from the Flashpoint story. They never do things by halves because the people in this industry, running this industry today, are not like the titans of old. I've mentioned this so many times. Well, guess what? Mike DeLuca is one of the titans of old, and he's a really, really robust, good producer, good creative. And as I say, big mistake that he's not running DC Studios. I think if James Gunn messes this up, at least they've got, a good substitute in Mike DeLuca to take over, and that's my opinion on that. So there's a lot of red flags here. As I've said before, I support James Gunn as a good writer-director. I'm excited to see what he's doing with Superman Legacy, but as I said on the top of the show, I still have some problems. I still have some issues. And that's why I spoke about it being called Legacy. And, the whole all-star Superman thing. And the fact that I still think that he could be baiting and switching Superman. I think that's a reality. We are where we are today. I don't trust New Hollywood. I do not trust these people. And, all the things that I'm kind of cataloguing now are why I don't trust these people. Maybe I'd trust James Gunn more if I felt James Gunn was making all the decisions. And that's another problem. As well as him just trying to squeeze his original projects into a brand new DC universe, he's not totally in control of anything. I've said this before on this channel as well. Why is he a CEO? He's not in charge of the Batman, not really, of that cinematic universe. He's not in charge of what Todd Phillips is doing. If he goes anywhere near Todd Phillips's, set, he would have got his butt bashed in. You know what I mean? It just wouldn't. He's not in charge. All he's in charge of is his little DC universe, and that's the truth. That's the truth of the situation. So he's not really a co-CEO. He can't cancel the Batman 2. He can't cancel Joker Folia 2. He's just letting those guys do whatever they want. And that's what I'm saying. Having this franchise, DC Universe, was pointless from the very, very beginning when you could have had Gunn doing his thing, Phillips doing his thing, Reeves doing his thing, and Snyder also doing his thing, and different creatives doing their own different Elseworld projects that are not connected. The era of the connected cinematic universe is dead. Even the king of the cinematic universe, Kevin Feige, is failing. We've had details this week cataloguing that they wanted to make the Blade actor the fourth lead in a Blade movie. And, the amount of money they wasted on She-Hulk, etc., etc., etc. So that's done. That's dead. The era of the cinematic universe is dead. They should have done that in 2013. They didn't do that in 2013. They caused problems for themselves by saying they were doing something that they didn't really do. So, and this is where we find ourselves. And this is why I said earlier, the future of DC film is DC Elseworlds, not DC Universe, because there's so many red flags when you think of DC Universe and what they're planning. They have announced part 1 of a slate. Well, where's part 2? Where's the announcement? You're doing a Lantern series, not a Green Lantern movie. You're doing a Wonder Woman prequel series in Paradise Lost, but not, it seems at this moment in time, not a Wonder Woman series. Although some fans argue with me that's going to be in part 2 of Gods and Monsters. I thought that earlier on as well. I'm starting to have my doubts about that. So let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? Are you confident that James Gunn can pull this off? Or do you see the same red flags as I do? Something else was revealed yesterday. Superman and Lois has been cancelled at the CW. So after its upcoming 4th season, it will be gone. It will be finished. This equals the 4 seasons of Lois and Clark, the new adventures of Superman. But, to be clear, Lois and Clark made more episodes via those 4 seasons. And the achievement of Lois and Clark was bigger than Superman and Lois because that was on the ABC network, one of the major American networks. So to last for 4 seasons with more episodes was a bigger achievement. It's even a bigger achievement than Smallville, because Smallville was on a rating-starved network. Alan Miles, the creators of that show, only wanted to go for 5 to 7 years, but the CW were in so much trouble, they needed Smallville more than Smallville needed it. So it's very, very sad that there will be no Superman and Lois after Series 4. I just hope they finish it off in the right way. It's absolutely been a unique take at Superman. This is Superman and Clark Kent, the husband, the father, with 2 boys, Jonathan or John Kent. Is it Jonathan? Let's just call him Jonathan, and Jordan. And in this idea, it's Jordan who has the powers and Jonathan who doesn't. Now, in the Superboy, in the comics, Superboy has the powers, John Kent has the powers, and there's no Jordan in those comics. So that was always a very unique, strange storyline as well. How will they end it? Will Jordan die and will Jonathan inherit those powers? How does this end up? Now, this show was created by Greg Berlanti and Todd Helbing, who helped develop the Flash series in its infancy with Jeff Johns, and again, with Greg Berlanti. And in its infancy, the Flash movie was one of the great, comic book TV series until Todd left. And Todd did such a good job with Superman and Lois. He decided to divorce it from Arrowverse to the frustration and anger to a lot of Arrowverse fans. But I agree with that, because by the time Superman and Lois was being developed, basically there really was no Arrowverse. It had died. It had gone past its peak. So it was the right decision to do that. And as I say, Superman and Lois is a very emotional show. It's also a very epic show. It mixes the epicness of Superman flying, Superman being a hero, with Superman being a father, being a husband. We've had Bitsy Tulloch as Lois Lane. Wasn't quite sure about her casting at first, but she certainly grew on me. So I think it's one of the good, solid adaptations of Superman in recent times. Despite me loving Cavill and Snyder, Man of Steel, BVS and the Snyder Cut, that was a very polarizing version of Superman. But Superman and Lois united many different Superman fans from different walks of life and different mentalities on who Superman should be in live action. Tyler Hoechlin was introduced as Superman in Season 2, Episode 1 of the Supergirl series, where he was an outstanding version of the Man of Steel. But to be clear, the Superman in the Supergirl series and in Arrowverse isn't the same Superman as Superman and Lois. Totally different character, wears a totally different costume. He wears a better costume as far as I'm concerned in Superman and Lois. I mean, it's a bit of a dodgy costume at times because it just looks like he puts it over his head because it creases a lot, doesn't it? Apart from that, Superman and Lois was a very good show, and I'll be sorry to see it go. But it's important that this show is finished off in the right way. I don't think this is any surprise to anyone that this show is ending. The CW was bought out by another company. It's not doing DC Heroes anymore. It's not owned by WB anymore. WB own the DC trademark. So, you know, this new CW would have to pay extra credits for that. They clearly don't want to do that. What could have happened quite easily is that Superman and Lois could have been transferred over to Max as an ongoing series. Clearly, WB don't want to continue making it. But is there a light at the end of the tunnel for Superman and Lois? Is it definitely the end for Superman and Lois? Not necessarily. We've seen this brand new Batman animated series from Matt Reeves, J.J. Abrams, and Bruce Timm, you know, is being bought by Amazon, and Amazon will be, you know, broadcasting it on their streaming service. We know the older Batman animated series will be on Netflix, and the original Justice League series will be back on Netflix. And there's always been these kind of, you know, this battle to sell Snyderverse to Netflix. WB, like many studios right now, have bottomed out financially, and they're quite happy to sell off or lease out certain things that make the money and mean that they don't have to invest in making it, but they can make a little profit on these things at the same time. Is there a potential of Amazon or Netflix taking over the production of Superman and Lois? I think there is a 25% chance of that happening. I think there would be interest if it was possible to do. Now, there's a little soap opera called Neighbours that's been around for decades, and it was cancelled by Channel 5. They were paying for it to be produced. And we had the final episode. It was epic. It was amazing. Then a few months later, we found out that the Amazon broadcaster Freevee would be producing Neighbours. It's been back for a few months, and it's been very, very successful. So you never know. Superman and Lois may continue with another streamer. It's unlikely, but there's always a chance the way entertainment is made today. It's never too late for the thing that you stand. But as I say, I think it's been a great series. I think it's really worked for a lot of people. I know a lot of fans are very upset by this announcement, but at least you got a fourth and final season. This show was never going to last for 7 or 8 years. That was never going to happen anyway. It's amazing within the current circumstances that we're getting a fourth and final season. It was a shame they had to recast the actor who played John Kent. He was a great version of John Kent. Apparently he had to step back for mental health issues, if that's true, if that's the case. You understand that, but it was a bit weird how the cast and production weren't backing him publicly on social media. The actor playing Jordan allegedly removed him from his Instagram as well. All very strange pieces of behaviour. Maybe the production felt let down by the actor moving away. We will never know. But it has been a positive experience watching Superman and Lois, and people around the world have really enjoyed that series. I remember watching the pilot and just feeling, wow, this is a really emotional pilot. It really gave me the feels. It really worked. I think it's one of the finest television pilots I've ever seen, and considering that we're in current day, it will be very easy to make Superman look like a jerk, because this is what they do to all men these days, because New Hollywood hate men. It's as simple as that. But this series has been excellent. We remember the controversy around one of the writers who was later fired for wanting Jonathan and Martha to be played by actors of colour. Again, this race bending when there's no need to race bend. In fact, the series is very, very inclusive with Latino actors on the show and Latino characters. And that's been great. The actress who plays Lana is Latino. The actor who plays her daughter is Latino. The husband is Latino. I think that's true, right? If I'm wrong about that, please correct me. So there's been some really good representation and inclusion on this show. So I don't think anyone's got anything to complain about. But when you're looking at race bending, Ma and Pa Kent, I think you're crossing a line. There's ways of being representative and inclusive without doing things like that. But there's a lot of extreme people in Hollywood today, and that's where the problem is. So I will always remember Superman and Lois with fondness. Bitsy Tulloch, great. Tyler Hoechlin will go down as a great Superman as far as I'm concerned, playing two different versions of this character. So you never know. Netflix may come in with their red cape and save the Man of Steel.